360 degrees of influence. Get everyone to follow your lead on your way to the top. The summary in brief. Leadership doesn't have to be a top-down proposition. In fact, the best leaders influence those who are below and above them, as well as people external to the organization, such as customers and partners. This 360 degrees of influence is what separates the good leaders from the great leaders. Founder of the global executive coaching firm GuruMaker, Harrison Monarth makes a living helping top figures in business and politics hone their influencing, communication, persuasion, impression, management, and media skills. He teaches leaders how to operate without relying on spin or manipulation. In 360 degrees of influence, Monarth provides advice on how to gain the trust and respect of those around you, no matter where they're positioned in the organizational hierarchy, and how to expand your influence well beyond your immediate environment. Providing valuable insight into human emotion and behavior, Monarth reveals the secrets to becoming the most psychologically astute person in the room, so you can be the most influential leader in the room. In addition to sharing insight he has gleaned during years of coaching top executives, Monarth includes techniques and tips to help you tackle the challenge of influence and leadership head on. Right now, one of your own counterparts might be exerting influence over you and your boss. You can do the same thing. Apply the lessons of 360 degrees of influence to place yourself in the best possible position to lead the leaders. In this summary, you will learn how to assess your current influencing power, how to overcome resistance to your ideas and proposals, how to know what people are thinking and feeling even better than they do, how to use 5 valuable decision-making strategies, how to create an influence strategy tailored to your organization's hierarchy. Swayed, nudged, and driven influence is constant. A New Zealand bank helpfully nudges customers to save money on impulse by just pressing a button on their iPhone. Apparently, there's an app for that. New York taxi cabs have a touchscreen on the back of the front seat suggesting how much passengers should tip the driver upon arriving at a destination. Big, colorful buttons give the option of paying $2, $3, or $4 if the fare is less than 15. If your fare is more than 15, the buttons display percentages from 20 to 25 to 30%, clearly counting on people's laziness or inability to calculate and self-select a fair tip. Cabbies are happy to report that gratuities have shot way up, again due in part to these highly suggestive buttons that are tilted toward generosity. We face tens of thousands of minor and major interactions every day that guide and steer us in one direction or another. While all this influencing and nudging is perhaps becoming more obvious as we get older, it's been a factor from the moment we released our first gut-wrenching screams upon entering this life. We are born to influence. These days, it's impossible to walk down the street without experiencing the power of influence. Even if the street is completely empty, beckonings, warnings, sales pitches, and opinions fill every conceivable angle of our vision. This exposure to influence begins with our earliest sense of self. At the moment we acknowledge we're not alone and experience desire in some form. For most of us, this begins at birth. With that first infantile desire emerges a natural instinct as to how to obtain what we want. Infants are not able to rationalize, prioritize, or otherwise communicate outside of their own desires. Yet they get what they want by opening their cute little mouths and letting it rip. This first taste of the power of influence begins a process of developing and understanding our inherent powers in that regard. While social and domestic variables conspire to take this ability to different places and levels, the universal fact is that it is there within us, always available as a power to be reckoned with. Whether that power emerges as harnessing influence to get what we want or succumbing to it and becoming helpless against the desires of others remains an issue not so much of fate as of comprehension. In other words, some get it and some don't. Your personal influencing arsenal. Edward M. Hallowell, doctorate, doctor, medical doctor, an instructor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, says that relying on face to face meetings is the most effective influencing strategy of all. Perhaps more than any other aspects of leadership and career empowerment, the art of influencing others in a 360-degree manner depends on two realms of skill: the ability to craft your thoughts and presentations clearly, strategically, and persuasively, and the ability to apply the proper tools and the power of scientifically proven human psychology to the effort. It all begins and ends with an outward facing understanding of your audience and shaping your intentions to create a win win situation that plays into their sense of worthiness, fulfillment, and the better good of all. 360 degree influence starts with you. If you want to advance toward a goal, you have to pay attention to the goal and to your progress toward it. If you set an unreasonable goal too hard, you lose motivation, and if it's too easy, you'll coast or don't keep your behavior in line with that goal. Nothing happens. Actually, nothing is the one possible outcome in our daily lives. We constantly risk losing credibility for lack of focus, inability to meet deadlines, fiscal irresponsibility, or any other reason closely connected to not being able to self-regulate. Thus, many people find themselves puttering away in the same cubicle they were assigned when they first started at the company, or was. If you are motivated enough to learn the nuances for influencing others, you have to discipline yourself in terms of the goals you set, and in monitoring your progress toward those goals. These are the tips to master self-regulation. Number one, determine exactly what you want to work on. Be specific. Maybe you've identified an opportunity for improvement, or your boss has given you a gentle nudge. Either way, you'll have to define the issue in clear language. Clear thinking and language are critical to being seen as an influencer. Number two, recruit additional resources. Whether you're trying to get in shape or become a more compelling presenter, it's difficult and unnecessary to go it alone. Ask a coach and watch others who do it well. Influencers keep their eyes and minds open for any tool and information that will help them reach their goals. Number three, seek feedback everywhere. Work on your emotional intelligence as you learn about yourself from others. Feedback and your own feelings. The more feedback you can gather and the better perceptions, the more you can adjust or stay the course. Drop what doesn't work and keep what does. Number four, start small. Incorporate new ideas you learn about. Note the result and then add some more. Number five, treat your life like a laboratory. You're experimenting with a new approach, and experimentation means failing is okay. Failure just means that one method isn't working, so you search for another. Always head forward. Thomas Edison once said, "Hell, there are no rules here. We're trying to accomplish something." Smart influencers don't give up. They look for other angles. Breaking through resistance. How do we convince those around us who think they already know everything, they need to know? Ken Broad-Abam, writing about the influence of scientific testimony on a jury, notes that the mere presentation of the facts is not enough. So it's not enough to convince skeptical jurors. Scientists like to present new knowledge in a revolutionary framework. This changes everything. But human learning tends to be more evolutionary. Because discovery is so often disruptive, it can work against you. Therefore, instead of offering scientific evidence as a challenge to current beliefs, offer it as a supplement. This advice easily translates to the workplace. How many people do you know who are highly protective of their turf or unwilling to entertain even the thought that someone else might know more than they do? Probably plenty of them. Here's how to gently influence their beliefs. First, instead of outright demolishing their convictions, build off of them. It's much easier to coax people over a bridge than it is to convince them to jump across a chasm. Second, teach them about the issue before attempting to persuade them. This can work as a kind of priming. By reminding your audience of knowledge they already have and treating them as capable of learning more. You connect their prior knowledge to your new facts, lay the groundwork, then build your story on top of it. In litigation lawyer terms, prepare them to accept your version of events. Finally, Broad Arms states the most complete explanation wins. While jurors and coworkers are not always impressed with the reams of data, lacking those data can certainly hurt your credibility. If you want to persuade others to follow your lead, you have to demonstrate that you have the knowledge to lead. A demonstration that requires you to run down as many objections as possible. 3 keys to overcome resistance. To help you on your path toward greater influence, here are the 3 common types of resistance and how you can overcome them. Number 1, this has nothing to do with anything. Connect your change to the overall goals of the organization or project, pointing out how it fixes ongoing problems or it will improve the current situation. Number 2, been there, done that. Ask them to explain the prior innovations and why they failed. Then walk them through your proposal and show them how the two differ. Respect their prior experience and invite questions about your proposal as a way to hook them into seeing the proposal through your eyes. Know what really motivates people and what people really care about. If you had to boil down the challenge of influence to one word, it would be empathy. Derived from the Greek pathos and the German word Einfühlung, it is defined as the ability to identify and understand somebody else's feelings or difficulties. The very definition parallels that of reading minds. Common social myth holds that women are better at this than men, but research hasn't sufficiently substantiated that theory. The field here is actually level, at least in one area. While men do just as well with empathy on issues of economics and commerce, research does show that women still rule the empathic roost when it comes to relationships. Where keen skills are even more critical to attempts at exerting influence. Mastering the art of empathy depends on the successful interpretation of both verbal and nonverbal cues that link to the thoughts and feelings of others in a given moment or span of time. Body language, facial expression, content, vocal tone and volume, and how people interact with others on their side of the issue paint a clear picture for astute influencers who have developed the ability to assign meaning instantly to what they see, hear, and perceive. One Columbia University experiment attempted to measure empathetic accuracy, that is, the ability to perceive correctly what others are experiencing. Researcher Jamil Saki and his colleagues noted that perceivers were most accurate when they could both see and hear the targets, less accurate when they could hear and not see, and least accurate when they could see but not hear the targets. Clearly, vocal cues are terrifically important to the ability to infer what another person is feeling. No surprise there, perhaps, but it was surprising that those discussing negative experiences tended to be far more expressive than those discussing positive experiences. The researchers suggested that because the expression of negative emotions is less socially acceptable, perceivers are far more likely to pick up these cues and thus to analyze those emotions more accurately. The conclusion was that negative energy and resultant empathy is more easily perceived than positive energy. While this may be obvious, it sharpens the influencer strategy at both ends of the spectrum. Bottom line, it's easier to sense when you're bombing than when you're nailing it. How our decisions define our ability to influence. The decisions we make in the worlds of politics and business, in particular, hardly ever affect only us. The benefits of smart decisions and the fallout from bad ones have potentially wide-ranging impact on the lives of colleagues, peers, families, and communities. The net result from this often being a measure of our personal influence in the aftermath. Making decisions involves taking responsibility, not just for the decision itself, but also for the consequences of that decision. This means you have to think beyond your decision, consider its implementation and the impact of your choice, and recognize that despite never having perfect information, you nonetheless have to choose. To decide, in short, is to risk. If that sounds a tad dramatic, maybe you should reflect on why so many people refuse to decide. Ask yourself why you sometimes avoid or dislike making decisions. While the aforementioned inevitable lack of perfect or even insufficient information is to blame, the truth is that sometimes people don't want the responsibility that comes with that decision, or more specifically, they don't want to deal with the possibly unpleasant outcomes of a disputed decision. However, 360-degree influencers can't afford such immunity. Just look at the people you admire or strive to emulate. Do they waver or equivocate? Do they unload responsibility on someone else? The fact is, leadership and influence are inseparable. From challenging decision making, and the more we know about the process, the better equipped we are to bolster our influence in all directions with the making of sound decisions. 5 decision making tools. So, what can we do to ensure that we make good decisions? Here are 5 strategies that can help you cut through biases and can cloud your thinking and give you ways to make hard decisions with clarity, without or with far less regret. Number 1, focus on the process, not primarily the outcome. It makes good sense to use solid decision making process that can offer a better chance for delivering good results. Number 2, be skeptical. Critical thinking is underrated, and testing the validity of assumptions and evidence means you'll be in a better position to defend your decisions than those who merely believe or take the word of pseudo experts. Number 3, list the relevant variables. Tom Davenport, President's Chair in Information Technology and Management at Babson College, cautions, without some inventory, all decisions will be treated as equal, which probably means that decisions won't be addressed at all. Number 4, sort the relevant information. After making your list and checking them twice, draw up consequences, tables, and scrutinize your objectives. Do anything that forces you to separate out the insignificant variables from background noise. Number 5, eliminate irrelevant information. In some situations, you might simply want to go through your list and eliminate those items that are less important to you. Setting the stage, strategically influencing people's decisions. Now that you've got all your decision making figured out, how do you go about influencing the decision of others? Reason and evidence do matter a great deal. And having them on your side via diligent research and preparation can make influencing easier. But if you don't consider all of the other variables at play in the decision making process, you are likely to be pushed aside in favor of someone who has pitched his or her argument in a way designed to appeal to the people with the final word. Perception shapes thinking and behavior. Depending on the interactions you have and to what degree and purpose others seek out your company, expertise, help, or input, you are somewhere along the continuum or of likable, contributing, valuable resource, influential. It's important to know where you are. Having an unbiased view of how others perceive you is an absolute must in any quest for leadership. You can lead, guide, teach, and inspire if you don't have an accurate picture. You can't lead, guide, teach, or inspire if you don't have an accurate picture of your level of influence with others. You have to know whether people see you as competent but intimidating, whether they don't take you seriously or take you way too seriously, whether they feel they can trust you or that you're someone who hogs all the credit. The list of variables is inexhaustible, just like the range of human judgment with all its nuances and shades of gray. High potentials and executives on the fast track are given all kinds of tests to help them see the blind spots in their communication and leadership styles, from 360-degree multi-rater feedback to Myers-Briggs type indicator to DISC, and our colors on the personality dimension scale. There's no shortage of assessment tools to tell us where we fall short or hit the mark on leadership. Avoiding groupthink. Research psychologist Irving Janis defined the term groupthink as follows: a mode of thinking that people engage in when they are deeply involved in a cohesive in-group. When the members striving for unanimity override their motivation to realistically appraise alternative courses of action. Professor David Garvin and Michael Roberto suggest that influencers try to build constructive cognitive conflict into the decision-making process as a way to both to try to head off effective and personal conflicts and to inoculate against groupthink. They suggest creating a point counterpoint or intellectual watchdog process whereby some members of the team are tasked with creating alternative proposals. Point counterpoint or designated critics of any proposal watchdog. The process is repeated as proposals are revised to meet objections until all members reach a point of common agreement. Whether it is the dreaded groupthink phenomenon that results in a particular context or any other choice that you see as a threat to your ideas or business, try to influence the setting and change the environment so you can have a chance of influencing the outcome. Mastering organizational politics. Organizational politics can be a constructive and positive aspect of a manager's career if it's properly understood and practiced, rather than engaging in behavior that undermines trust and seeks to gain personal advantage with oblique maneuvers. Enlightened professionals influence organizational culture in a more principled way. They cultivate mutually productive relationships with key players. They recognize and negotiate existing power structures, and they purposefully seek buy-in for ideas with more than a peripheral understanding of people's individual agendas and personal values. To refuse to acknowledge the value of constructive political behavior is to leave yourself unprotected and vulnerable to having your agenda blindsided and your best efforts derailed by prevailing forces. Cynicism and resulting behavior that leads to defensive and possibly underhanded politics in return is self-serving rather than in service to the organization, which leads to a culture-defining deterioration of trust, teamwork, and the greater good. Likewise, capable of upstanding executives and managers who persistently view all politics with suspicion may routinely watch their more politically savvy colleagues pass them by for otherwise deserved recognition, rewards, and increased responsibility. Political strategies and tactics. There are a number of ways to strategically leverage your cultural influence. Working off the insights of Andrew Durbin, Professor Rex Mitchell notes that there are three main types of strategies: those aimed at gaining power, those aimed at building relationships, and those designed to avoid political errors. It is important to recognize what your goals are within your organization. Do you seek to move up or expand your range of responsibility, Or are you more interested in networking across the organization and throughout the hierarchy? Those tactics necessary to move up, displaying dramatic results early and often, mastering key information and controlling lines of communication, may not work as well as if you seek a power base built on relationships. In the latter case, you want to both consult and to be consulted, as well as to develop a reputation as someone who's both knowledgeable and willing to help. There is overlap in those two types of strategy, particularly in the necessity of demonstrating your mastery over a knowledge base or skill set, but how you leverage that mastery may vary with your goal. Executive presence and 360-degree influence is based on what you know about the needs, values, and perceptions of others. And information is the first line of both offense and defense in that department. Influencing up. The objective of pleasing your boss is nothing new to the science of career advancement, but with everyone aiming for that goal, a keen understanding of the issues that keep senior management up at night and sequestered in day-long meetings becomes a context for performance excellence and project success, rather than something you learn about in sterilized form in weekly departmental assemblies in conference room C. Showing genuine interest in what senior executives are dealing with as they chart the course to navigate the treacherous waters of business competition in a battle for market share lets upper managers notice the performers or the performer as well as the performance. Getting there isn't solely about giving management what they want. While it may seem a subtle difference at first, success comes from actually wanting what they want and making sure your aligned desire is visible and so that it contributes to your career equity as much as any tangible results you deliver. When you genuinely want what your leaders want, you have successfully adopted their agenda, not merely promoted yours. That's half of the ball game when it comes to influencing the perception of upper management. Be yourself. Make no mistake. You're always being evaluated and judged. From your cool in front of the executive team as you justify quarterly results to your banter on the 10th tee. Your ability to influence is partially dependent on how socially intelligent you are perceived to be in the presence of another executive, regardless of the pressure or agenda. Just as with any presentation opportunity, you need to be prepared for either a planned or a chance encounter with a manager or an executive who is on the short list of people who can impact your career for better or worse. Above all, be yourself. The oldest Dale Carnegie technique in the popularity manual applies here. Show interest, ask questions, listen, engage, add value, be empathetic, and by all means, be yourself. Influencing the opposite gender for mutual success. We may believe, or we want to believe, that we see only individuals and are able to work with whoever can work. But our examined biases keep getting in our way. For example, one study found that mixed gender mutual fund teams perform worse than either all male or all female teams. One commenter suggested that this was due to the communication problems across all genders. The first step to working together, then, is to recognize that we all have biases. We may each like to see ourselves in clear thinking individuals guided only by evidence and reason, but alas, our biology and psychology conspire against such clarity. Clarity is possible, but you have to work for it. The second step is to recognize that leadership skills are just that, skills. Assertiveness, verbal dexterity, and problem solving are not exclusively encoded in our genes. They are behaviors that can be learned. There's no reason to believe that men are born leaders and women are not. The willingness to develop and make use of our entire repertoire of skills is the third step. There are advantages to both the agentic and communal styles, Cultivating our ability to make use of every tool in the kit allows us to adapt to each particular situation, taking charge when that's needed and inviting participation when that will lead to the best result. Influencing the public's impressions of your organization. Andy Beal, co-author of Radically Transparent: Monitoring and Managing Reputations Online, declares that everyone has a reputation, online and off. Every reputation has its weak spots, and every reputation will come under attack. Two of the more important aspects of reputation management are strategy and tactics. Strategy is the overall plan, usually encompassing a goal or purpose. Tactics are the specific actions you take or tools you use to implement that plan. The distinction is important, as the strategy must guide the tactics, not the other way around. It also helps to think of strategies as long-term and often behind the scenes, something developed over time and in sync with the products and ethos of the company, whereas tactics are more flexible and utilitarian tools that can quickly be adapted to changing environment. Key lessons on influencing perception. Trust, authority, innovation, admiration, and the competitive advantage of their products all help to define the top-rated companies as the best. What should you pay attention to? Different advisors generally agree on a few main themes. Number one, reputation matters. Companies at the top integrate the concern for their reputation into the structure of their business rather than treat it as a public relations adjunct. Number two, reputation management is an activity, not a slogan. You must actively monitor media coverage about your company and be in a position to adjust your message as needed. Number three, tell the story. Recognize that if you don't tell the story of your company, someone else will. Number four, know your base. The companies that succeed are those that know what business they're in. Number five, earn the trust of all stakeholders. Aloof no longer cuts in the wide open social media age. Number six, acknowledge errors. Those employees who are in a position to fix the problem should be adequately trained and empowered to do so. Number seven, fix the error. Reward employees for doing so. Number eight, recognize emergent concerns and respond to them. Number nine, never complain, do explain. It's never good to get a reputation as a whiner. There are no excuses or no excuses. Using your words to influence and change minds. As you look for ways to broaden, develop, or start building your sphere of influence in all directions, the power of speech is part of the foundation you have to master. It's more than public speaking and giving presentations, which most people have learned to see as necessary evils and unpleasant spectacles best performed on autopilot with navigator named PowerPoint in charge. Speaking to influence and change minds takes more than a routine approach. While useful for anyone, it's most critical to those up-and-coming leaders and professionals who passionately care about making a difference and who won't stop because they've succeeded in stirring the emotions and engaging the minds of those who can help make it happen. It's not enough, however, simply to stir the emotions of your audience if you want to influence them. Instead, you have to shape their emotions to direct them to your preferred outcome. That's where framing comes into play. The skill of framing is critical to the tool chest of anyone looking to influence others because people automatically look to assign meaning to the communication signals they perceive around them, and to frame strategies to manage the meaning people take away. When we attempt to frame an issue, we carefully choose our words in a way that focuses attention on a particular meaning, the one we want to convey. Among several possible meanings, the facts are spiffed up, dressed up in partisan clothes, and lined up as part of the consideration. Considering the impact language can have in creating meaning in people's minds, and considering the ways language affect the way they perceive reality, we have to be aware of how this influence is exerted. Even in free speech society, it becomes incumbent on the sender of words to understand and weigh how those words may be interpreted and acted on. Managing the influencing power of your personal brand. A quick online search of personal branding will quickly overwhelm you with more than 3.9 million related sites, many with advice on how to build your brand. Less apparent, however, is how to leverage that brand into real influence. This is key. Recognize that your brand is not simply a kind of label, but also a process, one that you continually manage to expand. Your opportunities. A brand is not the end, but the means to the end. Creating an influential brand. So, how do you create an influential brand for yourself? Creating an influential brand. So, how do you create an influential brand for yourself? First, cover the basics. Many of us have been in situations where one guy talks about how hard he works, and one guy simply works hard. And we all know who we'd rather work with. Yes, when you want that promotion, you have to highlight your effort and results, but it will only resonate if you have actually produced those results. Shouting "I'm impressive" is unlikely to impress your colleagues, at least not in the way you intend. Which brings us to the first step, figuring out what you intend. How do you want others to perceive you? It helps to think in terms of narrative. What is your story, and what character do you play in your story? Create a vision or big picture that has you as a protagonist, and use that as a guide for your behavior. The second step is to get a sense of your environment. Find out what makes your associates tick and what ticks them off, and adjust your behavior accordingly. Some firms frown on exuberant self-promotion, whereas others expect it. Some have tight hierarchical structures, while others are more open. Some assign new hires a mentor with whom they are expected to work closely, whereas others take a sink or swim approach. Figure out what's rewarded and what's punished. Then do your best to cultivate the former and avoid the latter. It helps to think in terms of, if you want to be perceived as, you need to. In order to influence others, you need to. Here are some examples. If you want to be perceived as an expert, you will need to demonstrate credibility in order to influence others to accept your claim. You need to tailor your message with the audience's beliefs, values, and predispositions in mind. If you want to be perceived as reliable, you need to show up to meetings prepared, meet deadlines, and consistently produce good work in order to influence others. You need to work with those others and be willing to share what you have learned. If you want to be perceived as a leader, you need to demonstrate a willingness to take charge, make difficult decisions, and accept the additional obligations of leadership in order to influence others. You need to take advantage of leadership opportunities that are presented to you, asking to head a team or volunteering to take the lead on solving a long-standing or emergent problem. Whatever value you want others to associate you with, or to associate with you, you must first demonstrate it in your behavior. Summing it up, having influence in virtually every direction is more than a skill. It's a lifestyle and a mindset based on foundation of critical principles that every modern professional needs to master in order to reach the top of his or her field and achieve personal career goals, as well as larger objectives that can make a difference in the world.